Imagine this. We have machines that can compose symphonies, but we still struggle to compose a peaceful world. We can beam messages across oceans at the speed of light, yet so many hearts remain stranded in silence. We can measure the age of the universe with astonishing precision, but we can't agree on what truth even means. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? We've built a civilization that touches the stars, yet we still wrestle with the most primitive parts of ourselves: tribalism, fear, greed, the fragile need to be right. You might say we live on Earth, but sometimes I wonder if there are many Earths, parallel versions of our planet, coexisting not across galaxies, but within the same timeline. Each one shaped not by physics, but by perspective. There's the Earth of science, where facts and data rule the land, and the Earth of belief, where conviction often outweighs evidence. The Earth of abundance, where technology empowers life beyond imagination, and the Earth of scarcity, where billions still struggle for food, water, or dignity. These Earths are not light years apart. They're separated by perception, by how we choose to see, to act, to care. And that leads us to a question far more profound than any equation of cosmology. If we can live in the same physical world, but experience entirely different realities, which one is real? You see, when physicists speak of parallel universes, they imagine infinite versions of existence, each born from a different outcome of every choice, every possibility. But perhaps, in a quieter way, we're already living in that multiverse psychologically, socially, spiritually. Each person inhabits their own cosmos of meaning. For one, the world is a marketplace. For another, it's a battlefield. For yet another, it's a miracle. And in those interpretations, entire civilizations rise and fall. Now, science gives us tools to understand what's out there: the motion of galaxies, the birth of stars, the rhythm of atoms. But what we often forget is that those same tools can help us look within. Because the universe doesn't just surround us, it includes us. The same physical laws that shape black holes also shape the neurons that wonder about them. The carbon in your DNA was forged in the heart of a dying star, an explosion so violent it ripped through space-time, scattering the ingredients of life itself. And so, when we gaze upward and ponder the cosmos, we're really looking back at our own reflection. We are, quite literally, the universe becoming aware of itself. But awareness alone is not enough. For all our knowledge, for all our data and technology, we still struggle to build meaning from it. We can calculate the orbital period of exoplanets hundreds of light years away, but we can't seem to find balance in our own orbit of daily life. We speak of exploration, of the boundless frontier, and yet so many live with frontiers of fear, ignorance, and division. Maybe the greatest frontier isn't out there among the stars. Maybe it's here between what we know and how we choose to live that knowledge. The physicist in me loves paradoxes because they are nature's way of nudging us toward deeper truth. And one of the greatest paradoxes of all is this: we are both insignificant and profoundly significant at the same time. In the cosmic scale, we are but a pale blue dot suspended in a vast, indifferent darkness. Yet within that dot exists consciousness, the capacity to question, to imagine, to love. Think about that for a moment. The atoms that once floated in the cores of ancient stars now form the neurons that wonder what a star is. We are the universe observing itself and deciding what kind of observer to be. That's not arrogance, that's responsibility. Because if consciousness gives us power, it also gives us accountability to each other, to our planet, to the fragile timeline of life that we briefly occupy. Every civilization in history has believed it was the center of something, the center of creation, the center of power, the center of truth. And each time science advanced, it humbled us. Copernicus showed that Earth wasn't the center of the cosmos. Darwin showed that humanity wasn't the pinnacle of life, but part of a continuum. Einstein showed that even time and space bend to deeper laws. And yet, here we are, centuries later, still building invisible empires of ego and ideology, each of us declaring our little patch of Earth as the real one. We've replaced old superstitions with new ones. Algorithms that tell us who we are, feeds that define what's real, and numbers that measure our worth. We've created digital worlds so immersive that sometimes the physical one feels secondary. Are we living in the real Earth, or have we slipped into a simulation of our own, making crafted not by silicon, but by self-deception? Now, don't get me wrong. Technology is not the villain in this story. It's a mirror, a reflection of the human mind. When we build telescopes, we're extending our sight. When we build the internet, we're extending our voice. But when we build walls, social, political, or digital, we're extending our fears. Every invention is an echo of intention. The question is, what intention are we amplifying? Let's take a step back and view our species from a cosmic distance. From the edge of the solar system, Earth is just a speck, a pixel adrift in an ocean of darkness. And yet, that single pixel holds every laugh, every heartbreak, every hope that has ever existed. That perspective should humble us. It should unite us. But too often, we turn away. We're so immersed in the immediate notifications, headlines, likes, that we forget the eternal. We mistake motion for progress and information for wisdom. The galaxies spin, the stars burn, the universe expands, and we scroll. We scroll through existence, one fleeting distraction at a time. If aliens ever tuned into our collective behavior, they might mistake our glowing screens for ritual offerings to some digital deity. And perhaps, in a sense, they'd be right. But here's the hopeful part. We are not doomed to remain this way, because awareness, true awareness, is the most powerful force in the universe. A supernova can reshape galaxies, but human awareness can reshape destiny. When we understand our place in the cosmos, not as rulers, not as victims, but as participants, something remarkable happens. We begin to live as if we belong to something larger than ourselves. And that changes everything. To live on the real Earth is to recognize the unity beneath diversity. It's to see the invisible threads connecting every action, every choice, every consequence. It's to know that the carbon we exhale today may become part of a tree tomorrow, that our words may echo in the minds of generations we will never meet. It's to understand that existence is not a competition, it's a collaboration, a dance between chaos and order, entropy and creation. And we are the dancers and the dance. The laws of physics tell us that energy is never lost, only transformed. So too with compassion, curiosity, and courage. Every act of understanding ripples outward, reshaping the cosmic story. Perhaps the real Earth isn't a place at all. Perhaps it's a state of consciousness, a version of this planet that emerges whenever we act with integrity, with empathy, with a sense of wonder. If that's true, then every one of us is a dimension in the multiverse of Earths. Every decision we make, every time we choose truth over comfort, kindness over indifference, knowledge over ignorance, we collapse the wave function toward a better reality. In that sense, the question isn't, are we living in the real one? The question is, are we helping to make it real? When the first humans looked up at the night sky, they didn't see galaxies or gravitational waves. They saw stories, patterns in the darkness, lions and hunters, gods and monsters, hopes and warnings written in light. And perhaps that was our first great act of creation, not of matter, but of meaning. Because the stars didn't change when we named them. We did. We began to see not just what is, but what could be. That shift, subtle, almost invisible, was the birth of imagination. The dawn of humanity's first parallel Earth. An Earth where the same sky, the same stars, the same physics became the stage for myth and morality, for fear and curiosity. One group saw divine punishment. Another saw cosmic order. And from those interpretations, entire civilizations rose and fell. It turns out our greatest discoveries were never just about the universe. They were about how we see it. In ancient Babylon, astronomers tracked the motion of Venus with mathematical precision, long before telescopes or calculators. They believed they were reading the will of the gods. And in a sense, they were, because their gods were projections of the human mind, painted onto the heavens. But centuries later, something began to change. In Greece, thinkers like Thales, Pythagoras, and Aristotle dared to ask not what the heavens mean, But how they work? They stripped away myth to reveal mechanism. And in doing so, they revealed something even greater, that nature could be understood by reason. That idea, the radical notion that the universe obeys laws, was the spark that lit the long fuse of science. Fast forward to the Renaissance, Galileo lifts a small tube of glass to the sky and discovers that the universe is far stranger and far grander than anyone imagined. He sees moons orbiting Jupiter, tiny worlds, dancing around a planet, not the Earth. And in that moment, humanity's sense of center begins to unravel. It wasn't just astronomy that changed that night. It was philosophy. It was identity. Because if Earth was not the center of the cosmos, perhaps we were not the center of meaning either. And that realization, that humble, terrifying liberation, has echoed through every discovery since. Copernicus dethroned Earth. Darwin dethroned our uniqueness. Freud dethroned our control. And quantum physics dethroned certainty itself. Each time we believed we had found the real Earth, the universe whispered back, "Not yet." But here's the irony. For every step science takes toward truth, humanity often takes a step back into illusion. When Copernicus moved the Earth out of the cosmic center, many refused to look through Galileo's telescope. When Darwin unveiled the kinship of all life, entire societies clung to myths of superiority. And when Einstein showed that space and time are relative, we doubled down on our absolutes. It's as if each time reality expands, we contract. Each time the universe humbles us, our egos build new fortresses. We are, in many ways, the most intelligent yet insecure species the cosmos has ever produced. Today, we live surrounded by knowledge, billions of pages, millions of studies, entire galaxies of data, and yet so many feel more lost than ever. How can that be? It's because information without wisdom is like starlight without a telescope. It illuminates nothing. You can drown in facts and still die of ignorance. We've built a world that rewards quickness over depth, convenience over comprehension. We treat curiosity like a luxury rather than the essence of being alive. And so, though we stand on the shoulders of giants, many have chosen to stare at their phones instead of the stars. But history reminds us that this is not new. Every age believes it has reached the peak of understanding until the next discovery reveals a higher summit. The Egyptians believed the sky was a goddess stretched over the earth. The medieval scholars believed the heavens revolved around us. The Victorians believed the Milky Way was the entire universe. And we believe our technology has made us wise. But wisdom is not measured in processing speed. It's measured in humility, our ability to recognize that what we don't know will always exceed what we do. There's a phrase I often return to. The more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless. That line came from physicist Steven Weinberg, who, after a lifetime studying the cosmos, saw in its vast indifference a challenge not to despair, but to create meaning. Because if the universe doesn't hand us purpose, that means purpose is ours to invent. That's not nihilism. That's empowerment. If the cosmos doesn't care, it also doesn't constrain. We are free to shape the narrative of our existence, to decide which Earth we will inhabit. And yet, freedom without awareness is chaos. Our tools outpace our wisdom. Our reach exceeds our grasp. We've engineered a world that can alter the climate, rewrite genomes, and simulate intelligence, and yet we still stumble over the same questions that haunted our ancestors by firelight. What is truth? What is justice? What is enough? We build machines to predict the weather, but we can't predict our own behavior. We can send rovers to Mars, but we struggle to send empathy across the street. Perhaps the question isn't whether we can change the world. Perhaps it's whether we can change ourselves. Think of reality as a lens. Every culture, every mind, grinds its own version of it, polishing some parts, distorting others. Science tries to make that lens clear. But even science is wielded by humans with our hopes, our politics, our limitations. So we have not one Earth, but billions of overlapping interpretations of it, each refracted through experience. And when those interpretations collide, when the parallel Earths of perspective overlap, we get conflict, ideology, misunderstanding. It's not that truth vanishes. It's that it becomes harder to see through the fog of our own certainty. So what does it mean to live on the real Earth? It means being willing to adjust your lens. It means realizing that being wrong is not a failure. It's a sign that you've encountered something real enough to challenge you. Every great leap in science began with discomfort. Every social revolution began with doubt. Progress is the child of curiosity, not complacency. We didn't map the stars by accepting the darkness, we mapped them by questioning it. When we discovered that light bends around gravity, that time stretches with velocity, that space itself can expand faster than light, we weren't just learning about the cosmos. We were learning about ourselves, about the flexibility of truth, the elasticity of understanding. Reality is not static. It evolves as we do. The universe doesn't hand us answers, it hands us phenomena. The rest is interpretation. And so, in a very real sense, every generation builds its own version of Earth. An Earth defined not by geography, but by awareness. Imagine if we could see all these versions stacked atop one another, billions of Earths coexisting in the same space, each vibrating at a different frequency of understanding. On one, people fight over borders. On another, they see only the borderless sky. On one, power is worshipped. On another, curiosity is sacred. On one, humanity destroys. On another, it creates. All these Earths are real because their consequences are real. But only one will determine the future of our species. The universe doesn't play favorites. It doesn't care which Earth survives. But we should. Because while the cosmos will go on for billions of years without us, the meaning of it all, the poetry, the science, the laughter, the love that depends on us, we are the fragile link between physics and feeling, between hydrogen and hope. The cosmos made stars, planets, and black holes. But only one thing we know of in all the universe can make compassion. That's us. And maybe that's what it means to live in the real world, not the one of material things, but the one of conscious beings. A world where understanding is not just a privilege, but a duty. If you could hold a mirror large enough to reflect an entire planet, what would you see? At first glance, you'd see clouds swirling like white brushstrokes across blue. You'd see continents, forests, oceans, a living marble suspended in black. But if that mirror could see deeper beneath the surface, you'd see something stranger. Billions of smaller mirrors, each one held by a human being, each one angled differently. Each one reflecting a different version of the same world. That's the age we live in now, the age of mirrors. A time when the line between reflection and reality has grown thin. When our devices don't just show us the world, they edit it, filter it, reshape it in our image. And the more mirrors we build, the less we agree on what's real. In the past, humanity shared a common night sky. No matter who you were, a farmer in China, a poet in Persia, or a sailor in Greece, you looked up and saw the same stars. You may have told different stories about them, but you shared the same canvas. Now, our skies are algorithmic. Each of us looks up, not at the cosmos, but into customized constellations of data. Each star, a notification, a headline, a post designed just for us. We no longer share one universe. We share billions of digital ones, each orbiting its own truth. These are our parallel Earths, not separated by light years, but by Wi-Fi signals. Not created by quantum events, but by human choices. We once feared the rise of artificial intelligence machines that might outthink us, replace us, or surpass us. But perhaps the greater danger is not that machines will become more like humans, it's that humans will become more like machines. We've optimized ourselves for speed, not depth. For reaction, not reflection. For efficiency, not empathy. We scroll through suffering as if it were scenery. We mistake visibility for value and noise for knowledge. And in doing so, we've built an economy of attention, a marketplace where the most valuable currency is outrage. Because outrage is quick, it spreads, it sells. Meanwhile, truth moves at the speed of verification much slower than the speed of emotion. And so, the Earth divides again. Not physically, but psychologically. We live on multiple versions of the same planet, each shaped by the gravitational pull of belief. When I think about it, it reminds me of gravitational lensing, that cosmic phenomenon where a massive object bends light, distorting what lies behind it. Every black hole does this. Every galaxy cluster. Reality, seen through the curve of gravity, appears stretched and warped. The same thing happens here on Earth, only our gravity is ideology. Every belief system bends truth around it, magnifying some facts and hiding others. The stronger the ideology, the greater the distortion. So maybe our world today is one giant lensing event, billions of minds bending reality in all directions, until even light itself doesn't know where to go. But there's a strange beauty in this chaos, too. Because to live in the age of mirrors is to live in an era of possibility. Never before in history have so many voices, so many perspectives, so many worlds been visible at once. In ancient times, it took centuries for an idea to travel the globe. Today, it takes seconds. That's not just progress, that's evolution. A new phase in the development of collective consciousness. And like any evolutionary leap, it comes with growing pains. We're learning to adapt not to scarcity of information, but to its abundance. Not to isolation, but to hyperconnection. Not to silence, but to infinite noise. And the question before us now is not, can we know more? It's, can we discern what matters? We used to think of intelligence as knowledge, how much you could remember, calculate, or explain. But in a world of infinite information, intelligence may come to mean something different. The ability to filter, to empathize, to focus, to resist manipulation, and choose awareness. Because awareness is the last frontier of freedom. And freedom is not doing whatever we want. It's understanding what we're doing and why. Sometimes, when I lecture about cosmology, I remind my students that the most powerful instrument in science isn't the telescope or the particle accelerator, it's the human mind. Because no matter how advanced our tools become, they still rely on our capacity to interpret what they show us. A telescope can see galaxies. A computer can detect exoplanets. But only consciousness can find meaning in those discoveries. And that's what we risk losing in our pursuit of convenience, our ability to be amazed. Wonder is the fuel of progress. Without it, we become technicians, not explorers. We forget that behind every formula, every equation, every pixel on every screen, there is a story, one that begins with curiosity and ends, hopefully, in understanding. The digital Earth we've built is dazzling, vast, fast, interconnected. But beneath its glow lies an old human question, wearing new clothes. What does it mean to be real? If your friendships exist through screens, are they less authentic? If your sense of self is shaped by algorithms, are you still you? If your attention is constantly divided, can you still claim to see the world clearly? We once built temples to gods we could not see. Now we've built systems we cannot control. And both demand something in return, our faith. Yet, for all this complexity, the path forward remains surprisingly simple. It begins with humility, the recognition that our minds are not flawless instruments, but works in progress. It continues with curiosity, the willingness to ask, what if I'm wrong? And it culminates in responsibility, the courage to act on what we know, even when the world looks away. Because knowledge without responsibility is like light without heat. It illuminates, but it does not sustain. When I think about the future of Earth, I imagine two possible timelines, two parallel trajectories of civilization. On one Earth, we continue as we are, divided, distracted, accelerating toward a horizon we haven't mapped. We create more, but understand less. We communicate more, but connect less. They survive technologically, but die spiritually. On the other Earth, the real Earth, we awaken. We realize that technology is not a substitute for wisdom, but an amplifier of it. We begin to use our tools to heal rather than to harm, to unite rather than to divide. We remember that progress isn't measured in terabytes or GDP, but in compassion and the ability of one human being to see another as an extension of themselves. That second Earth isn't imaginary. It's possible, but it depends on choice. You see, every moment of awareness is a fork in the road, a quantum decision that determines which version of Earth we live on. And the beauty of it is, we don't need to wait for governments or galaxies to change it. We can begin right now with the smallest act of clarity, kindness, or curiosity. Because change doesn't start at the top of civilization. It starts in the quiet chambers of individual minds. Every act of awareness collapses the wave function of potential reality into something tangible. And when enough minds awaken, the world itself changes its frequency. So maybe the real Earth isn't a physical location. Maybe it's a resonance, a harmony between thought, action, and understanding. A dimension we create together through awareness. That's the fifth dimension physicists rarely talk about, not one of space or time, but of consciousness. It's invisible, yet it shapes everything visible. The universe, after all, doesn't separate the observer from the observed. We are part of the experiment. The cosmos becomes what we measure, and we measure what we are willing to see. Imagine, for a moment, that you're standing at the edge of time. The universe is 13.8 billion years old, and you're watching it unfold like a film played in reverse. Galaxies, contract stars sunburn, light returns to darkness. The Milky Way collapses into a cloud of hydrogen. The sun unshines, Earth unspins. Continents drift back into a single ancient mass. Forests retreat into the sea. Civilizations fade, then language, then life. And finally, even atoms themselves unweave into pure energy, the echo of a creation that once dared to know itself. Now pause there in that infinite stillness before the beginning. What do you feel? Nothing and everything. The void and the possibility. The universe, in potential, that is what we are, to possibility wrapped in consciousness. A self-aware fraction of eternity, briefly arranged into thought and flesh. When you look at humanity through that lens, our quarrels seem small. Our division, temporary. Our arrogance, almost comical. Because if the cosmos has been unfolding for billions of years, what are we doing with our fleeting moment of awareness within it? If evolution has taught us anything, it's that complexity doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, endless trial and error, mutation and adaptation, catastrophe and renewal. The same is true of moral evolution. Empathy, justice, equality, these are not natural states of matter. They are emergent properties of consciousness. They appear only when a species begins to see itself in others. And that's what makes this moment in history so critical. We're at the threshold of self-recognition, not just as individuals, but as a species. We've looked outward long enough to see galaxies collide and universes expand. Now we must look inward with the same curiosity, the same discipline, the same awe, because the next frontier isn't out there, it's within. When we discovered that stars die, we learned something profound about ourselves. That even the most radiant things in the cosmos have lifespans. But we also learned that from their deaths come new beginnings. A supernova doesn't just destroy, it creates. It forges heavier elements, seeding the next generation of stars and planets. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, all of it was once part of a dying star. You are literally made of the universe's courage to begin again. So perhaps the lesson is this: even in collapse, there is creation. Even in loss, there is legacy. We tend to think of the cosmos as something cold and distant, a realm of physics and silence, but I see it differently. To me, the universe is a teacher patient, consistent and mercilessly honest. It doesn't care about your beliefs or your politics. It doesn't play favorites. It simply shows cause and effect, action and reaction over and over again. If you ignore the data, the universe will not forgive you. It will correct you. And that's where humanity stands now, in the middle of a cosmic correction. Climate change, inequality, ecological collapse, these are not punishments. They are consequences. Feedback from a system we've pushed out of balance. The universe is not cruel. It's consistent, and it's reminding us that awareness without responsibility is entropy. Look again at Earth, this shimmering blue oasis, adrift in the void. For all our achievements, we remain one fragile biosphere, one shared atmosphere, one interdependent web of life. From the moon, there are no borders. From Mars, there are no nations. From beyond the solar system, there is only Earth whole, luminous, astonishingly alive. That image should unite us, but too often it divides us, because we see it not as our home, but as mine or yours. We've become possessive of a planet that doesn't belong to us, a planet that existed billions of years before humans and will continue billions after. We are guests here, tenants in the cosmic timeline, and like any guest, we are judged by how we treat the host. The irony is beautiful and tragic. We've learned enough about the universe to destroy ourselves, but not enough about ourselves to save what we love. We can predict the movement of galaxies, but not the movement of human hearts. We can harness the power of the atom, but not the power of empathy. And so we find ourselves again at a crossroads between two Earths, one driven by fear and the other by understanding. The question is not which Earth exists, it's which one we choose to inhabit. Science, at its best, doesn't just describe the world, it connects us to it. When I look at the DNA of a whale, I see kinship. When I measure the carbon in a meteorite, I see family. When I gaze through a telescope at a distant galaxy, I see the same elements, the same physics, the same spark of creation that made me. To be scientific is not to be cold or detached, it's to be intimate with reality. It's to look at the universe not as other, but as us. If we ever hope to live on the real Earth, we must reawaken that sense of intimacy. The awareness that every breath we take is borrowed from trees, that every drop of water we drink is recycled starlight, that every life we touch alters the gravitational field of meaning around us. We are participants in a cosmic symphony, atoms tuned to consciousness, improvising in time. And the melody we play matters. It determines whether the next movement of this grand composition will be harmonious or chaotic. There's a reason the astronauts who first saw Earth from space all said the same thing, that the experience changed them. They call it the overview effect. From orbit, the divisions of politics and prejudice vanish. What remains is awe, the realization that everything we fight over is contained within a single fragile sphere floating in the void. They return not just as astronauts, but as ambassadors of perspective. If only we could all experience that view, to see our species not as 7 billion strangers, but as one family huddled together on a cosmic life raft. That's the view from the real Earth. That's the perspective we've been too busy, too distracted, too divided to see. And maybe that's the great tragedy of intelligence, that we're smart enough to imagine paradise, but foolish enough to destroy it. Yet, paradoxically, that tragedy is also our hope. Because awareness of our flaws is the first step toward transcending them. The universe has already given us the raw material for redemption, curiosity, reason, empathy. We just have to choose to use them together. Every great turning point in history, the abolition of slavery, the birth of democracy, the discovery of relativity, began not with armies, but with awareness. A single thought, shared and acted upon, can alter the trajectory of the species. And that means the next revolution won't be technological. It will be psychological. It will happen not in laboratories, but in minds. Imagine if we could harness human awareness the way we harness solar energy. Imagine if compassion were as contagious as fear. If truth were as profitable as deception. If understanding were as valued as intelligence. That would be a civilization worth living, in a civilization in resonance with the cosmos, not in conflict with it. Because the universe does not reward dominance. It rewards balance. Stars live longest when they burn steadily, not violently. Ecosystems thrive through diversity, not control. And perhaps civilizations endure through humility, not hubris. The laws of physics tell us that entropy always increases, that disorder is inevitable. But within that inevitability, life finds a loophole. It creates order. It builds complexity. It resists the drift toward nothingness. That's what we are: localized pockets of defiance against chaos. We are the universe's rebellion against oblivion, and that makes us extraordinary. But with that extraordinariness comes a choice. Will we use our awareness to illuminate or to consume? Will we become the flame that burns too fast, or the one that endures and warms the next generation? Because, make no mistake, the cosmos doesn't need us to continue, but meaning does. And meaning is what we bring. Every species, at some point in its story, must decide whether it will merely survive or truly live. For humanity, That moment came when we looked up not in prayer, but in possibility and said, let's go there. The space race wasn't just about rockets. It was about perspective. It was the moment a species dared to leave home, if only to understand it better. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface in 1969, humanity did not just cross a physical distance of 240,000 miles. We crossed a psychological one. For the first time, we saw Earth as it is small, borderless, radiant, alive. That fragile blue marble suspended in black became the most profound symbol in human history. It told us that the line between us and them was an illusion, that the battles we waged over land and ideology were as absurd as arguing over property lines on a lifeboat. That photograph, Earthrise, may have been the single most important selfie in the history of civilization.